Welcome to I May Be Wrong.
I don't know what this world is coming to.
But I don't think so. We're broadcasting from the greater Nashville area, the home of country music, beyond the borders of political correctness and identity politics. Facts and faith are our demarcations. Truth lights our path.
Here's the Barry White of Podcast Radio,
the Venerable Alfonso Ashworth.
Well, welcome to another exciting episode of I May Be Wrong, but I don't think so. We have a great lineup today. We're going to be talking about something very, very important to you if you're an American, if you're someone who loves this country, if you're someone who loves the Constitution, if you're someone who loves this culture, this way of life, you're definitely going to want to tune in. If you have something you want to say it to me, or you want to say it to my guest that's in the queue, you can chat with me on Facebook Live. You can go into my Facebook Live and leave a chat. We'll see it. Or you can go to my website at I may be wrong, but I don't think so.com, and you can then also get me there. And it's a live chat on the screen. I only have 30 minutes, so I've got to dig right into this because I have someone, he's been on here before. I've had him on before early when I started this show. This is a topic that I love to talk about, but I also hate to talk about. I hate to talk about this topic because people don't want to listen. You don't want to hear it. You don't want to hear that the change in the demographics in this country is going to bring this republic to its knees. You think right now that things are bad. You wait till the demographics in this country shifts to a point to where there is no recovery, no way for us to ever catch up. And I got somebody in the queue that's going to talk about that. Before we get started, I see Bill Davenport. Good morning, sir. You are in the chat. I see you there. If you got a question, you got a comment. I'm going to play a couple of video clips really fast because I want to get right into this. And we'll pick right up when I come back. Check these video clips out.
I will end the Muslim ban on day one. Day one.
He says he's going to end the Muslim ban on day
Hadith
one.
from the Prophet Muhammad instructs, whomever among you sees a wrong, let him change it with his hand. If he is not able, then with his tongue. If he is not able, then with his heart.
Make no mistake, people. 2020 is our year. Let's dive into it with 2020 vision. We can see clearly that America is fighting for its very soul.
We all come from the same root here in terms of our fundamental basic beliefs. And I just want to thank you for giving me the opportunity, for being engaged, for committing to action this November. It matters. Your voice is your vote. Your vote is your voice. Muslim Americans' voices matter. I'll be a president who seeks out and listens to and incorporates the ideas and concerns of Muslim Americans on everyday issues that matter most to our communities. That will include having Muslim American voices as part of my administration.
But getting it out
I don't have time. I'm going to play another clip at some point, but I want just on that clip alone, just on that issue
let's
alone,
do our part and join the
we need
largest
to know
Muslim
what's
voter
going on.
mobilization
And I'm going
in
to bring
America.
my guest on. This man, this young man, is someone that I have been watching for a while because he is someone that has been on the radar screen. Part of the show that I was with called Line Chasers Radio. He also has been involved in the politics of the transition of Islam, what's going on with Islam. He's got a lot to say about that. Carmel Malamed is an award-winning international published journalist. He's not new kid on the block. He's been around a while. His family, of course, is Iranian, but he is of Jewish faith. And also, he is someone that I admire. Carmel, welcome to the show, sir.
Hi, Al. Thank you for having me.
Sir, you heard what Joe Biden just said in a commercial. Tell my audience, one, give us a little bit of your background and why it's important that we listen closely to what our politicians are saying and what they're meaning about what they're saying.
Okay. Again, thanks for having me, Al. I really appreciate it. Before I offer any kind of commentary, I think it's important to lay out that um, there are many thousands of Muslims in our country, in the United States and worldwide, that are peace loving and, you know,
Right.
great human beings. They have no issues with our Judeo Christian values and our democratic system. I think it's important to lay that out.
Okay.
What we are talking about are the folks that are wanting to implement Sharia law, which is radical Islamic uh, dogma and uh, belief on our system.
On our
As far
Constitution.
as my family's story, we were Jews living in Iran. My community was 80,000 strong in Iran in 1979. Iran was multi-ethnic, multi-religious society, Muslim majority, but the Shah was a very tolerant leader, and people got along for the most part, even though it was a Muslim majority country. What happened was his regime was overthrown, and the Ayatollah Khomeini's regime came into place and implemented this radical fundamentalist Islamic Sharia law. And overnight, we realized as non-Muslims that do not follow radical Shiite Sharia law that we were third-class citizens, and we did not have equality under the law. We had inferiority rights. The limited rights that we did have could randomly be removed by judges or clerics. So it was a very precarious situation for us. I won't get into further details, but we were forced to flee that country. And we came to the United States because it was a land of freedom, equality under the law for everyone, regardless of religion. And now it seems as if some of our politicians are pandering to those that may or may not want to implement Sharia law. So it's a very scary thing to see after your family has fled that. And America is really the last outpost. Where are we going to go? Where are we going to flee to if, our democratic system here collapses? There's nowhere to go. We are the last stand.
Well, you said it as well as I've heard it put. And also, let me clarify, I'm not here to attack Muslims per se. I'm here to attack Sharia law, radical Muslims, and what's happening in politics. For example, all protesters are not anarchists, but some are, and they're the ones causing the trouble. So yes, all Muslims are not terrorists, but unfortunately, they harbor or they don't stand against those who are. And that's what's happening in America today. We have politicians that will not stand against anarchists, Marxists, socialists, and yes, even those who want to bring in Sharia law, because we've already seen it here. Look, the barbarians are already inside the gate. They're no longer at the gate. They're inside the gate. And I want my audience to clearly understand, look, if you got something you want to say to Carmel, please post it in the chat. Or if you would like to ask the question, and I'll try to get him to answer it as well. Explain to those who have ears to hear this, what is the difference between the Sunni and the Shiite Muslims?
Really, it has to do with with their beliefs in the successor to Muhammad.
Okay.
Muhammad is their prophet, the messenger of God's Islamic message, and many thousands of years ago, they basically had a split amongst the believers. There were Sunnis that believed that the successor to Muhammad were certain gentlemen and his descendants. And then there were Shiites who believed that, no, that particular gentleman, that particular follower of Muhammad was not the correct successor. The correct successor was a different gentleman and his descendants. And there was a breakage,
Right.
so to say, between those of the faith. I don't want to compare it to Catholicism and Protestantism, but something similar, along those lines.
Okay. A doctrine. Something they had a difference in the doctrine or the understanding of what the prophet or what the messengers were saying. Also, which group is in Iran and which group is in Saudi Arabia? Because some people don't know these answers, so this is hard. I'm trying to make it clear as to why they're against one another.
Sure. The majority of Muslims in the world belong to the Sunni sect, and that encompasses Saudi Arabia, much of the Persian Gulf countries, those countries in North Africa, a lot of the Asian countries that are Muslim, like Indonesia and Malaysia, Iran, parts of Lebanon, parts of Iraq, parts of Afghanistan, and parts of Pakistan follow the Shiite sect, and they are Shiite Muslims. They are in the minority. The Sunnis are in the majority. That's just the way it turned out many thousands of years ago after the faith was established.
Yeah. Now, which ones want to push Israel into the sea?
Both.
See, there now we get somewhere.
There are Sunni radical Shiite, radical Sunni groups and radical Shiite groups that both want to drive Israel into the sea.
Yes.
They're just religiously, they have slightly different beliefs amongst themselves, but their hatred of Israel, and for that matter, the United States, or those that do not follow their strict Shiite Islamic or Sunni Islamic radical dogma, are the infidels. So their hatred doesn't really, differ when it comes to Israel or the, quote unquote infidels.
Yes. And now let's tie that with the Black Lives Matter movement and what's going on with Black Lives Matter, their hatred for the Jews, their hatred for Israel, and who and what is behind this movement that I think that's really more so from the outside versus the inside. There are some on the inside this movement of Black Lives Matter, but I think as a force on the outside as well. In your opinion, is that part of this destruction of Israel and also the ultimate destruction of our republic here in America? Do you see that as part of that as well?
I'm not sure if I understand your question.
Black Lives Matter is also anti-Semitic.
Absolutely.
Yes. And of course, Black Lives Matter is also being funded now by many of our corporations, and our universities have wholeheartedly embraced this movement. And I think this is where we have to be very careful. And of course, we're getting some responses in the chat room over this about what we're talking about, because I think it's very important. And I think it's very important to come from not only you as a Iranian Jewish American. Is that the correct way for me to say?
Correct.
That you have a culture and a history also from the Iranian people, that they haven't always been so radical, as you just said. At one time,
the Black Lives Matter leadership movement has come out and said unequivocally that they are anti-Israel.
Yes.
And let us not fool ourselves. As Dr. King said many years ago, prior to his death, anti-Zionism, anti-Israel beliefs are equivalent to anti-Semitism.
Yes, exactly.
So yes, they are vehemently anti-Semitic, anti-Jewish, and anti-Israel. They've said it. They're very proud of it. It's sad and shameful that a lot of these corporations and
sports
individuals support them.
Yes.
And have not stepped up and said, hey, you know what? This is wrong. This doesn't, this has nothing to do with social justice. This is just hate. My biggest problem with them is the fact that they single out the Jewish state for supposed injustice to the Palestinians, but yet they don't look at injustice from some of these other groups throughout the world against these groups. For example, just throw some examples out there. What about the Chinese oppression of the folks in Tibet? Correct. Why is there any outrage there? Why isn't there any outrage of the Chinese oppression of Muslims living in some of the Chinese provinces? Why is there any outrage at what's going on in parts of Africa where you have Christians that are being slaughtered in places like Nigeria by the Muslim majority? It's really, really disturbing and sickening that they're singling out the only Jewish state, but yet they don't have any objections. They don't raise any issues about other minority groups and other groups that are oppressed in the world. It's just, it stinks of anti-Semitism and just Jew hatred.
Right, and I have made this argument, and I'll continue to make the argument that most of this has been rooted in not only anti-Jewish, anti-Israel, but also anti-American and anti the Republic, the Constitution. And that's part of what we should be concerned about when Rashida Tlaib, Ilhan Omar, and those that are coming out that are anti-Israel, but they also have opportunity to set policy in this country. And now you have the vice president, the former vice president, that is wanting to embrace this, but not separating the radicals from those who are good Muslims. They won't do it. They won't come out and say anything negative about the anarchists or the groups of Black Lives Matter. Now, quickly, you heard what Joe Biden had to say. Now, he's going to be running for president. There's no doubt about. I don't know who his running mate's going to be, but I promise you they're going to be far, far left. When your family came here when? In the 70s? Or the 80s?
In the late 1980s.
Late 1980s. And how old were you when you come here?
I was shy of 2 years old.
2 years old. Now, you've lived here as an American your entire life, practically. Would you have imagined?
America is my home.
Yes. So would
the only home I've known.
Yes. So would you have imagined that you and I would be having this conversation at this time in this country concerning our republic versus what is going on in the Middle East and other parts of the world when it comes to our freedoms. I mean, I couldn't have imagined. I was born here. I'm 58-year-old.
No, I'm really shocked. Really, I am, and it's in many ways it's frightening because I grew up hearing the stories, not just from religious minorities in Iran, like Jews and Christians and Baha'is, but even from Muslims that lived in Iran and faced incredible oppression from this radical regime. They hated the Ayatollah. They still hate the Ayatollah and that regime, and thousands of them have fled and come to the United States. After hearing all their stories, it's really heartbreaking that we're in a country where this type of radicalism is creeping up. And we know from experience, either personally or through our families, that there's some serious red flags, and we need to speak up and, put a stop to it before it starts going downhill. And again, I've got to emphasize this. This is not any issue against Muslims or Islamic belief. This is really directed toward radical Sharia law, which sees non-Muslims as infidels, as second-class citizens, and really no equality to them.
And that includes women.
That's what we need to focus the laser on.
Yes, and that's why when I asked you to come on, I wanted to make sure we understand that this is one of the issues of our time, not just the fact that the pandemic or the virus and all that, those things are a concern. But we have a bigger concern that once this happens, and as you can testify, and you have understood as an American, as an Iranian, and a Jewish, of Jewish faith, you understand once that tipping point happens, it's nearly impossible to stop it. At some point, it's going to reach a threshold, and we will not be able to do anything about it at that point. Where do you think we are in that situation?
If you're talking about demographics.
Yes, demographics.
Yeah, we're in a precarious situation. I don't think our situation is as bad as what you have going on in Europe. Where there are enclaves that are in Paris and London and Brussels and over much of Western Europe, where there's radical Sharia law being implemented in parts of cities and neighborhoods. And the society, the police, the Western democratic institutions cannot go in there and enforce their democratic laws and beliefs. Police are frightened from going into some of these enclaves that follow radical Islamic beliefs and dogma. And they're in a very, very serious situation because the police and the military, in many instances, don't want to go into those areas. They're just outnumbered.
Right.
We haven't gotten quite there, but it seems as if we're moving toward that direction because over the years, especially during the Obama years, they allowed an influx of refugees from a lot of these Islamic countries without looking at who they were and what their beliefs were. Places like North Africa and Somalia,
right,
and other parts of the Middle East. And now these folks have come in and they're starting to spread some of their ideology. Places like Michigan and Minnesota.
Exactly.
I sent you a video from a Shiite Black African American Muslim cleric in Michigan, preaching about how great the Iranian former dictator Ayatollah Khomeini was, which was, it's just absurd.
Right. And of course, Muammar Gaddafi.
It's fermenting. It's growing.
Yeah.
Again, I don't want people to think that this is Islamophobia, not in any way. But this is very frightening when you see these groups with such radical beliefs that have come into the country and are trying to spread their dogma and really don't have any respect for equality under the law for those that don't follow their radical beliefs.
Right. And of course, Muammar Gaddafi said that they would take over without firing a shot, basically. They would do it without having to use the gun, that they would just outnumber a population.
Yeah, Gaddafi made that famous statement, I think it was maybe a decade ago.
Right.
When they asked him if Europe needed to be invaded by Islamists. And he said, no, our greatest weapon is our Muslim women's womb.
Right.
We will have more children than the Europeans. We will outnumber them, and eventually Europe will become an Islamic continent. And it's coming to fruition. Very sad.
And it's coming to America. It's coming to the West. That's the warning. Of course, Carmel, tell my audience if they want to get in touch with you, if they want to know more about what you do, what organizations, your writings, of course, how to contact you. What's the best way for my audience to contact you?
They can reach me through Facebook or through Twitter. Just my name, Carmel Melamed, Karmel Melamed. I write for a variety of publications here in the United States and in Israel and overseas. My focus is on religious minorities and what they encountered in the Islamic and Arab world as a wake-up call for us here in the West and America. Again, it's not just the Jews.
Right.
It's the Christians. It's those that do not follow, and even Muslims that do not follow their radical Sharia law beliefs.
Yes, and that's the warning, folks. That's what we're trying to warn you against. That's why I had the show. That's why I had Carmel come on this morning. He's an expert on this issue, not only because he studied it, because also he has lived the life of this situation, and he's just warning you and warning us about this. Carmel, I want to thank you for getting up early. You're out there on the West Coast, of course. I really appreciate you getting up early and being on the show today. I will post your information on my Facebook and my website. So if someone wants to contact you or have more questions, they will be able to do so. But I want to thank you for coming on. And, of course, God bless you, my friend. And thanks for being a part of the show.
Thank you, Al. I appreciate it. God bless you and your audience.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Of course, there's not enough time to cover every subject. There is not enough time to cover every topic in depth. And we just take the time to do what we can. And Sherry Orange has posted something in the chat as well. There's zero rights under Sharia law. People need to check out what Islam is all about. Bridget Gabrielle and her family experienced it firsthand in Lebanon. Yes, and Carmel, his family, he didn't go into it, but he had family members who were also imprisoned and during the same time of that transition. I see that Paula is in the chat. Thank you for being in the chat, Paula. I see that, of course, Ruby Ruffin is also one of our supporters. She's in the chat as well. Thank you for coming in and share this message. Get this message out there. I'm going to go over just a little bit. get this message out there. I'm not being forceful enough. Look, the time to analyze this is over. The time to let academia try to figure this out has passed. This republic is under attack. Joe Biden is going to turn over this government. If he's elected, he's going to turn over this country to radical Islam. Black Lives Matter is just the fuel that keeps the fire burning. Who's funding Black Lives Matter? Does anyone know? I can take a guess. I would say Hezbollah has a lot to do with it. We know George Soros, he doesn't care. He just wants to bring down capitalism. The church in America is asleep at the pew. And they better wake up. And they better wake up like yesterday. Because the barbarians are no longer at the gate. They're inside the gate. They're inside the gate. But of course, only thing I can do is come on and talk about it. It takes action. It takes votes. So Heather Lee says, nice hat, by the way. Thank you, Heather. Heather is one of my best friends, well, really good friend. We really appreciate Heather and others who have helped out the show, who come on. And, of course, some of the comments, Paula says the greatest threat to the republic are apathy and ignorance. Exactly. They go hand in hand. You better wake up. You better get out there. You better know what you're doing. You better know who you're voting for. The Democrats, I'm telling you, they're going to sell out the sink. They're going to do everything. They're going to throw out the house with the bath water in order to beat Donald Trump in November. We can't let that happen. God bless you. God bless America. God bless our children. And God bless those children who are being shot. The body of Janari Risk has not cooled yet, and then there'll be another death. We have got to stop these murders of our children in and outside the womb.
You've been listening to Alfonso Ashworth, the Barry White of Podcast Radio. Go forth and share his message. I may be wrong, but I don't think so. Remember, no two people can ever occupy the same place at the same time. You were uniquely and wonderfully made. Born an original. Don't die a copy. God bless. Peace.